When you ask the internet for an NBA player with zero basketball IQ, you often see the face and name of J.R. Smith pop up. But why? Well, he often made horrible decisions with the ball, potentially cost his team a championship, and caused LeBron James to break his hand out of anger due to his mistakes. However, while some claimed that the way he played insulted the dignity of the game, others actually considered him as one of the most talented players in the league due to his 2 NBA titles, insane shot-making ability, and freakish athleticism. So, who was right? Well, in order to find out, we have to go back in time and see why JR never developed the so-called basketball IQ in the first place. September 9th, 1985, New Jersey. Earl Smith Jr., a former Division I basketball player at Monmouth University, and his wife, Ida Smith, have just welcomed their son, Earl Joseph Smith III, nicknamed JR, into the world. JR would grow up surrounded with basketball, and his father would begin to develop his son into an incredible athlete. As Smith grew into a young man, he would shine at Lakewood High School during his freshman and sophomore seasons, but would eventually choose to transfer to St. Benedict's Prep before the start of his junior year. So why would he do this? Well, St. Benedict's was one of the top programs in the country, and their national recognition saw their star shooting guard receive a letter that only 23 other Americans had gotten. Inside the envelope was an invitation to the McDonald's High School All-American Game, a multi-day event in which the top scholastic prospects train and then compete against each other in a nationally televised All-Star game. While most All-Star events are usually just for show, the McDonald's game would have all 30 NBA teams send their scouts to watch, because at the time, prospects could be selected straight from high school. But how would the New Jersey native perform against the nation's top prospects? 31st of March, 2004, J.R. Smith, who had committed to the University of North Carolina before this game, is one of the players who analysts believe can't make the jump straight to the pros. Yet, Smith would knock down deep threes, throw down dunk contest-worthy slams, and win co-MVP alongside the National Player of the Year, Dwight Howard. The rising star had completely shocked not only his teammates, but scouts across the NBA, who were suddenly suggesting to the rising guard that he should forego college and enter his name into the draft.
With the 18th pick in the 2004 NBA Draft, the New Orleans Hornets select J.R. Smith from St. Benedict's.
But was this a smart decision? Like most rookies back then, JR would have to earn his way into the rotation. He initially spent the majority of games on the bench, slowly proving himself to his former NBA championship-winning point guard, now head coach Byron Scott. As the winter rolled in, Smith, thanks to the fact New Orleans had such a young team, was given the starting shooting guard role. And on December 19, 2005, the Phoenix Suns were powerless to stop the 19-year-old silky smooth jumper. Not even fouling him could prevent the Hornets' top pick from finding the bottom of the net. Despite losing this game, JR had proven himself worthy of his starting role, ending the night with 23 points. And this wasn't all. As winter concluded, the Hornets freshman had been named as the Western Conference Rookie of the Month in January, February, and March. His 33-point explosion in their final regular season game was the cherry on top of what should have been a successful first year in the league. However, issues were beginning to arise between the young shooting guard and his head coach. Because while JR was clearly talented, his basketball IQ lagged far behind his ability to score. Smith would routinely dribble the ball for full possessions, only to then jack up a terrible shot. He would launch highly contested jumpers early in the shot clock and regularly found himself in poor positions with no one to pass to. To make matters worse, Byron had no interest in helping his struggling guard, and due to the Hornets' youthful roster, there weren't any veterans to show the teenager how to play the right way. Yet, things in New Orleans were about to take a serious turn for the worst.
Over the Bahamas forms Tropical Depression 12, a swirling band of wind and rain. It picks up moisture and heat, and with them, speed. As its winds reach 39 miles per hour, it becomes a tropical storm and is given a name, Katrina. New Orleans lies in shambles. It is left without power, without drinking water. Many residents are stranded on rooftops, desperate to be rescued.
nearly 2,000 people tragically lost their lives, and the Hornets' home arena was completely inaccessible. JR, alongside New Orleans' 2005 draft pick Chris Paul, were facing the reality of their 2005-2006 season being cancelled. However, Mick Cornett, the mayor of Oklahoma, would contact the NBA's commissioner, David Stern, with a simple solution. Desperate to save Louisiana's franchise, Stern would agree to Cornett's plan, allowing a temporary move of the Hornets to Oklahoma. JR was ecstatic. Not only was his season saved, but he now had an incredible point guard as his backcourt running mate, someone who could manipulate the offense and get him even more shots. However, head coach Byron Scott, uninterested in developing his sophomore shooting guard and frustrated with his lackluster basketball IQ, would bench JR. Angered with his coach's decision, Smith would seek answers from his leader, only to be ignored. So, in the same fashion as his supposed mentor, the Oklahoma guard would look to the media to make his feelings known, stating, "It would be best for me to go elsewhere." As the season came to a close, JR's wish would come true. The Hornets had traded the player who they thought would become a franchise cornerstone to the Chicago Bulls, who, shortly after receiving the former 18th pick, would send him to the Denver Nuggets. Smith, upon arriving in Colorado, realized this team was nothing like the Hornets. No, head coach George Karl and the Nuggets organization had championship intentions. However, on December 16, 2006, everything would change for the young shooting guard. Because as the Denver guard went up for a standard fast break layup, New York Knicks forward Marty Collins fouled Smith aggressively, which JR took immediate exception to. A massive brawl would break out, and given the recent events of the Malice in the Palace and David Stern's attempt to improve the image of the league, all involved were handed heavy suspensions. JR's superstar teammate Carmelo Anthony would be sidelined for 15 games, and his shooting guard would receive a 10-game suspension himself. But whilst Denver's main offensive threats were gone, the team would add someone who could potentially turn them from a playoff contending team to a championship contending team. The arrival of the 2001 NBA MVP, Allen Iverson, saw the Nuggets grab the 6th seed in the Western Conference, meaning the former Hornet was set to make his playoff debut against the 2003 and 2005 NBA championship winning San Antonio Spurs. But the now 21-year-old guard was still struggling with his basketball IQ. He was often unable to find open teammates. He would regularly dribble himself into multiple defenders, and it seemed like every time the ball hit his hands, it was going to be dribbled multiple times and then launched at the rim. Coach Karl, who had developed his coaching skills under the legendary North Carolina head coach Dean Smith, shared after their Game 4 loss that the way his shooting guard played was like watching the dignity of the game being insulted right in front of him. As a result of George Karl's view, JR would not play a single minute in Game 5, and the would-be 2007 NBA champion Spurs would easily move past the Nuggets. As the game concluded, Smith would sit frustrated in the locker room. He didn't understand why his coaches insisted on insulting the way he played, not only to his face but to the media, rather than actually helping him understand what was required of him. Yet Coach Karl would think of a genius way to solve his issues with his shooting guard. However, before he could implement them, JR's life was about to take a dramatic turn. On a warm evening in June of 2007, Smith would pick up his close friend, Andre Bell, to bring him back to his home for a barbecue. Yet, the Nuggets guard began driving recklessly, almost doubling the speed limit and ignoring traffic signals on his way home. JR would run straight through a stop sign, resulting in a collision with another vehicle. And because neither Smith nor Bell were wearing their seatbelts, the pair were sent flying out the front windshield. While JR would escape with his life, Bell was not as fortunate. The NBA guard was set to be sentenced for his behavior in 2009. 22nd of February 2008, Denver is visiting the Bulls in Chicago. However, Smith is no longer starting. No, George Karl has moved his scorer to the bench for one simple reason. As the game progressed, the now 6th man was on fire, displaying his ability to not only make normal shots, but incredibly difficult fading stepbacks en route to setting a new career high 43 points. While the Nuggets would lose this regular season game, the decision by Coach Karl was genius. Also, this might sound crazy, but a genius decision that you can make right now is to make sure that you're subscribed. JR could now enter the game with one goal in mind: score. And he was beginning to showcase a unique skill.
Felt like at the end of the shot clocks, going back to when I was a kid in the backyard, I felt like I could always make those shots for whatever reason. During the course of a game, it's like I could be wide open in the corner and I'll hit the side of the backboard, hit the side of the rim. But give me that ball within 2 seconds, I feel like it's going in for sure.
But Denver would run into some issues, as despite finishing with 50 wins, the Western Conference was loaded. Their incredible win-loss record was only good enough for the 8th seed. Therefore, if they wanted to win a title, they would have to get past the championship favorite number 1 seed Los Angeles Lakers in the first round. JR would continue to flourish in his new off-the-bench role. As the series continued, he averaged 18.3 points on 53% shooting. However, Kobe Bryant and his Lakers were on a mission. It didn't matter who Coach Karl threw at Kobe. Nothing was going to slow him down on his path to an NBA title. The Lakers superstar scored 49 points in Game 2 and would close out the series with 31 in Game 4, sweeping Smith and his Nuggets out of title contention. Something had to change in Denver, and soon. So, Chauncey Billups, the 2004 NBA Finals MVP and native to the Colorado area, was traded by the Detroit Pistons to his hometown team in exchange for Allen Iverson just 3 games into the 2008-2009 season. But why would Denver trade who was arguably the pound-for-pound greatest player of all time? April 13th, 2009, in the Nuggets' final regular season game, thanks to their new point guard's ability to distribute the ball, JR would set a new career high of 11 made threes, resulting in another career high 45 points. Denver had won their 54th game that season, enough wins to have them finish second in the Western Conference, and they were ready to compete for an NBA title. As the first and second rounds continued, the Nuggets six-man would average 16.3 points, aiding his team to series victories against the Hornets and the Dallas Mavericks. Denver had found themselves in a rematch against the Los Angeles Lakers, this time in the Western Conference Finals. However, games 1, 2, and 3 saw Smith only make 8 of his 35 field goal attempts, a terrible performance that would result in Los Angeles holding a 2-1 lead. JR knew he had to step up, or for the second year in a row, it would be the Nuggets heading home at the hands of Kobe Bryant. May 25th, 2009, despite only playing 28 minutes off the bench, the star six-man would decimate the Lakers' defense, nearly scoring a point for every minute he played. Denver's bench star's refreshed performance helped his Nuggets to tie the series, and everyone, including the Eastern Conference champion Orlando Magic, began to feel a shift in the series. But Kobe Bryant, fueled by his failure in the 2008 NBA Finals, would decimate the Denver Nuggets defense. Nothing, and I mean nothing, could slow him down. Bryant would drop 35 in Game 6. JR's 24-point performance off the bench was meaningless, as Los Angeles, for the second year in a row, eliminated the Denver Nuggets. And this wasn't all, because during the offseason, Smith was sentenced for his reckless driving incident that resulted in the death of his close friend in 2007. The judge would hand the now 23-year-old a 90-day prison sentence, which was eventually reduced to just 30, plus hundreds of hours of community service. As JR sat in his cell, he would reflect on his life so far, and the time away from his newborn daughter devastated the Nuggets guard. Therefore, he vowed to make a change. Once his 5-game suspension from the NBA had ended, Smith, eager to prove himself, would approach his head coach and ask about moving from the bench to the starting lineup. But Coach Karl viewed his scorer in a different light, as, in his eyes, it was more important who finished games, which JR was, and that the starting 5 was ultimately irrelevant. Yet Smith was uninterested in listening to his leader's opinion. He wanted to start, and that was that. This conflict of opinions was just another issue on an already large pile of problems between the pair, and the Nuggets' failure in both the 2010 and 2011 seasons only caused these dramas to be magnified, because JR wasn't the only person unhappy with his role, as the owners of all 30 NBA teams were upset with the amount their players were earning. This disagreement would result in the players being locked out of the 2011-2012 season, meaning not only was the year put on hold, but athletes weren't even allowed to enter their team's training facilities. While superstars such as LeBron James or Kevin Durant were able to use this opportunity to just focus on training and playing in exhibition games, regular NBA players like Smith were faced with a serious dilemma: remain in the States, train but make $0, or play overseas and potentially miss out on the season if it does resume. November 26, 2011. After months of negotiation, the NBA owners and the Players Association have finally reached a new deal. The 2011-2012 season will actually go ahead, resuming on Christmas Day that year. However, JR has an issue. He's currently in China, locked in to a 1-year, $3 million contract with the Zhejiang Golden Bulls, which, according to the Chinese Basketball Association rules, cannot be ended early. The former Nuggets scorer is stuck in China, but he wasn't going to let this opportunity go to waste. No, JR would record an insane 60 points off the bench and then an insane 52 points alongside 22 rebounds in another regular season game. Yet, while his on-court play was impressive, what he was doing off the court began to raise eyebrows worldwide because the Golden Bulls star allegedly missed the majority of their practices. And according to highly respected NBA journalist Adrian Wojnarowski, JR would order room service, spending thousands on the team's budget to his hotel room, but not to eat it, just to find out if they would keep bringing it up to him. Upon the conclusion of his time in Zhejiang, and given reports of his off-court antics, would anyone actually sign the free agent guard? Well, Carmelo Anthony, who had been traded to the New York Knicks before the lockout season began, knew just how gifted his former teammate was. Therefore, Anthony urged Knicks management to bring in the sixth man. So, on February 17, 2012, the Knicks would sign the former Denver Nugget. But given his on-court IQ issues, would he fit in with New York, or would this be the end of his career? Mike Woodson, an ex-point guard who was drafted 12th in the 1980 NBA draft by the New York Knicks, was appointed to be their head coach shortly after JR arrived. Woodson was considered by many to be a player's coach. His time playing in the league meant he understood what his athletes were actually going through, resulting in an instant bond between Coach Mike and his new shooting guard. While the Knicks were eliminated in just the first round of the 2012 playoffs, it was clear they were building towards something special. The main difference between his time in Denver and his time in New York was that he actually had the support of his head coach. In tight, game-winning situations, Coach Woodson would draw plays up for his sixth man.
Smith puts it up for the win. It's good! It's good! J.R. Smith! Smith catches, shoots, puts it up, puts it in!
And as the year progressed, Smith would set a new career high, averaging 18.1 points per game over the regular season. And this wasn't all, because due to his refreshed play off the bench, the NBA would award the former misfit the Sixth Man of the Year award, recognition of just how far he had come since entering the league as a teenager. Not only was the scorer developing individually, the Knicks were dominating as a team, holding a 3-0 lead against the Boston Celtics in the first round, until JR would do this.
He saved our season. Offensive foul on J.R. Smith.
His actions resulting in a single game suspension. New York, without their Sixth Man of the Year, would lose both games 4 and 5, giving the feisty Celtics a glimmer of hope. While New York did close out Boston in Game 6, their shooting guard was yet again struggling with his basketball IQ. The bright green light he had been given by his head coach began to highlight the greatest flaw in his game, as much like his time with the Hornets and the Nuggets, each time the ball hit his hands, Smith would end up shooting a poor shot, resulting in his field goal percentage plummeting and his Knicks being eliminated in just the second round by the Indiana Pacers. And this was just the start of the real issues for JR. Firstly, for the second time, Smith was suspended for the first 5 games of the 2013-2014 season. Why? Well, he had violated the NBA's drug policy. Not only would he face punishment from the league, but his on-court struggles only got worse, because late in a regular season game versus the Houston Rockets, JR would end up with the basketball in his hands with mere seconds remaining. While he usually shined in these moments, this time saw Smith ignore a wide-open Carmelo Anthony and then eventually pass up the game-winning shot attempt. And then as the season came to a close, the Knicks shooting guard would do the exact opposite against the Miami Heat. The now 28-year-old would set an NBA record which still stands to this day, attempting an insane 22 threes by himself. While he did manage to make 10 of them, the Knicks would ultimately lose once again. And it only gets crazier, as in another bizarre move by the former 18th pick, when lining up for free throws, Smith would often untie, or at least attempt to untie, his opponent's shoelaces. A move that not only frustrated his opposition, but also the league. The NBA would hand the Knicks bench star a whopping $50,000 fine for his confusing act. With New York failing to make the playoffs and only a single year left on his contract, many assumed the 2014-15 season would be his last. Because Phil Jackson, another former New York Knicks turned coach, was hired by his ex-team to become their president before the 2014-15 season began. His first move was simple: hire a new head coach, his own former point guard, Derek Fisher, to implement the offensive system that had won him 11 championship trophies, the Triangle. But there was an issue with this move, as the Knicks roster was built for a fast-paced offensive system that maximized their current talent. So Phil Jackson simply traded away all the players who he felt no longer suited his signature strategy. Yet no one, and I mean no one, was interested in taking on J.R. Smith until a few days before the trade deadline. A certain megastar made a promise to his general manager. LeBron James, who had decided to return to his hometown Cleveland Cavaliers before the 2014-15 season, had one goal in mind: bring a pro sport championship to Ohio. James knew all he needed to be successful was to be surrounded with elite shooters who were athletic enough to guard most positions on the floor. Therefore, he promised Cavs GM Dan Gilbert he would keep the misfit former Sixth Man of the Year in check and teach him what was required to become a champion. So, right before the trade deadline, Jackson would trade Iman Shumpert and throw in JR to the Cavaliers. Yet, how would Smith, who was used to carrying a heavy scoring load, be able to fit in with two megastars? As the regular season came to a close, J.R. Smith would finally begin to learn the lessons he had failed to be taught during his time in New Orleans, Denver, and New York. He was learning exactly what it took to be a champion. Every single member of the Cavaliers would show up early and leave way later to put in extra work. Smith would begin to find comfort in his new role, and Cleveland would end the season as the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. However, much like the last time he faced Boston, JR would take a swing at Celtics forward Jay Crowder. His reputation forced the NBA to suspend the now starting shooting guard for the next 2 games. Yet, this time, once he returned, Smith continued to flourish. His new role didn't mean he lost his green light. All that changed was the type of shots he was taking. Now, he was mainly focused on shooting catch-and-shoot threes, rarely ever putting a ball on the floor, as well as using his incredible athletic gifts to slow down the opposing team's shooting guard. Despite facing some drama against the Chicago Bulls, Cleveland would eventually find themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals, a matchup they would win without breaking a sweat. LeBron, JR, and the rest of the Cavaliers were set for their first shot at winning an NBA championship. Game 1. Overtime. Cavs point guard Kyrie Irving attacks against Warriors guard Klay Thompson, but as he went to slam the brakes, his knee buckled. Irving was removed from the game and rushed to hospital, with MRIs revealing the worst. Not only had Cleveland lost their superstar guard in their first round matchup against Boston, their star power forward Kevin Love had his shoulder dislocated. The Cavaliers' big 3 was now just a big 1. Golden State, led by their 2015 NBA MVP Stephen Curry, would pick their opponent apart, winning the 2015 NBA championship on Cleveland's home floor. Every single member of the Cavs organization was devastated, vowing that they would never let this happen ever again. However, on January 18th, 2016, Golden State would once again decimate the Cavaliers, ending this regular season game with a whopping 34-point victory. David Griffin knew something had to change, and fast. Head coach David Blatt was fired, and their lead assistant, former championship-winning point guard Tyronn Lue, was promoted to the top spot. Immediately, Coach Lue was able to do something Blatt had failed to do: push his Cavs into another gear. JR was only getting better in his role. He was shooting at a near league best 40% from 3, and his ability to lock up opposing stars was only improving with each passing day. LeBron had finally unlocked the true J.R. Smith.
I think what's getting overlooked in this whole thing is the other side of the floor with JR. People are overlooking what he's doing defensively, since he got here.
Cleveland rounded out their 2015-2016 campaign by steamrolling their way back to the NBA Finals. Yet the Warriors had also found another gear. In fact, it was like watching Vin Diesel in Fast and Furious. They had somehow found like 8 more gears. Golden State had broken a record that many thought would never be touched. They won a whopping 73 regular season games, beating the former record holder 72-10 1996 Bulls. Stephen Curry had won the MVP once again, but this time he became the first and only unanimous winner. Not a single voter had selected anyone else. Unsurprisingly, throughout the finals, it was Golden State who held a commanding 3-1 lead, and with Game 5 set to be played in San Francisco, many assumed this is where the Cavs would be laid to rest.
We just know it's one game at a time. We can't get too ahead of ourselves. We just gotta be humble, play our game.
June 13th, 2016, the Cavaliers would put on their alternate black t-shirt jerseys and walk out onto the floor of Oracle Arena with nothing to lose. JR continued to dominate in his role, adding 10 vital points, whilst his superstar teammates would both drop a shocking 41 points each, achieving the seemingly impossible. But Golden State was still just a single win away from back-to-back titles. Game 6, the Cavs stepped foot onto their home court for the last time that season, with one goal in mind: do not let the Warriors defeat us on our home floor again. Smith would defend not only their home court, but Golden State Warriors shooting guard Klay Thompson to the best of his ability. He got around every screen with ease, contested every shot Klay put up, and helped his team force a deciding Game 7 back in San Francisco. This was no longer the immature misfit that shot every single time he got the ball. No, JR was becoming one of the most important players in the whole NBA. But could he do it in the most important game of his life? Halftime. Game 7. Cleveland has found themselves down by 7 points as they walked into the away locker room at Oracle Arena. JR, who has struggled in the first half, would sit in his locker and reflect on all the work he had put in to get where he was today. Smith knew he had to step foot onto that hardwood floor and prove to himself the player that he truly was. As the third quarter began, the former Sixth Man of the Year would score 3 straight buckets, aiding his Cavaliers to retake the lead. However, the remainder of this win-or-go-home match remained deadlocked. Neither team could get ahead of the other until Warriors forward Andre Iguodala was able to get out in transition, except one Cavalier was in his way. J.R. Smith would force Iguodala and Stephen Curry into multiple passes, buying his freight train of a teammate enough time for the greatest block in the history of the NBA. Yet, a couple of possessions later, the score remained stuck at 89 all. So, Smith set an important screen for his point guard, forcing the much smaller Steph Curry to switch onto Kyrie, and the rest is history.
Curry, one-on-one, Irving puts it up, it's good! Kyrie Irving from downtown! By Spade's final seconds, it's over! It's over! Cleveland is a city of champions once again! The Cavaliers are NBA champions!
Hey JR, did you ever think you were going to get to this point?
I thought about it a lot, honestly, getting to this point, and the more my career went on, it kind of dwindled, and it was more about just playing the game. And I've been playing this game, fortunately for me, since I was 3 years old. That's one of the reasons why this game is so special to me. Today is so special to me. This is on Father's Day. My dad put the ball in my crib, and my parents, my family, that's the biggest inspiration of my life. I've been in a lot of dark spots in my life, and if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to get out of it. but they are who they are. They fought with me. They yelled at me, they screamed at me, they loved me, they hugged me, they cried with me. And they always stuck by my side, no matter right or wrong. And I know a lot of people don't have their parents in their life, their mother or their father, but I got the best tool you can ask for, I swear. My dad is easily one of my biggest inspirations to play this game. And honestly, if it wasn't for them, if it wasn't for the structure and the backbone that I have, I wouldn't be able to mess up and keep coming back and being able to sit in front of you as a world champion.
Now that J.R. Smith was an NBA champion, he would set a new goal: win a second.
Tell J.R. and everybody put on a shirt. That's it. All right. Take care now.
However, in a regular season game against the Milwaukee Bucks, the shooting guard would greet Bucks player Jason Terry, who was sitting on their bench. While there's nothing wrong with saying hi to an old friend, there is something wrong with doing it while you're supposed to be playing defense. And this wasn't all, as shortly after, the former six-man would fracture his thumb, forcing him to sit out 3 months during the regular season. Yet, his Cavs were still dominant. J.R. Smith's arrival back into the lineup before the playoffs saw Cleveland once again decimate their way back to the NBA Finals for another matchup against the Golden State Warriors. But this time, they hadn't gone 73-9. Instead, Oklahoma City Thunder superstar and 2014 NBA MVP Kevin Durant, after losing to the Warriors in the 2015-16 playoffs, decided to join forces with Stephen Curry to form what many consider to be the deadliest starting lineup in the history of the league. J.R. Smith's 25-point night in Game 5 was like shooting a spitball at a castle. Nothing Cleveland did was anywhere near enough to slow down a team that had 4 future Hall of Famers, all in the prime of their careers. Golden State would get their revenge, and things were about to take a dramatic turn in Ohio. Firstly, Kyrie Irving, frustrated with playing in the shadow of LeBron James, decided he wanted a fresh start where he could be the main focus of his ball club. Whilst losing one of the best point guards in the NBA depleted the Cavaliers roster, they still had LeBron James, Kevin Love, and an incredible supporting cast headlined by a healthy J.R. Smith. The Cavs starting shooting guard would appear in 80 games during the 2017-2018 season, and their retooled roster would grab them the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, earning them a first-round matchup against the Indiana Pacers. April 20th, 2018. Thanks to an incredible turnaround 3 from Kevin Love and Darren Collison missing his final free throw, the Cavs are down 2 with 5 seconds remaining. But Smith, in typical JR fashion, decided to jack up an incredibly tough game-winning attempt. While if you just focus on Smith, you would be okay with this shot. If you look to the left, Jordan Clarkson was wide open on the wing. Therefore, once again, JR's basketball IQ had cost his team a game, and Cleveland was now down 2-1. For what seemed like the 1 millionth time, LeBron James had to put his team on his back. Thankfully for Smith, James's dominance would rectify his mistake, with LeBron not only carrying his team past the Pacers, but all the way back to the NBA Finals for another matchup against, you guessed it, the Golden State Warriors. May 31st, 2018, JR and his Cavaliers are down a single point with mere seconds remaining. However, with the ball in LeBron's hands, the Warriors defense completely forgot about George Hill, who forced Thompson to foul him. Otherwise, he would have gotten a wide open layup. Hill would step to the line and sink the first free throw, tying the game. However, George would brick the second, but thankfully, JR would sky for the rebound. All he had to do was, wait, where is he going? Is he calling timeout? No, wait, what?
Block. And we'll go to overtime. You get the feeling J.R. Smith thought they had the lead. To throw it in, throw it to Looney, and that'll do it.
Angered by his teammates' lack of awareness and IQ, LeBron would enter the locker room after they threw Game 1 down the drain and punched the whiteboard so hard that he broke his hand. While the superstar initially downplayed the severity of his injury, he admitted the true extent of his problems after being swept out of another championship by Golden State. As the offseason began, LeBron James would leave the Cavaliers and move to the Los Angeles Lakers. Cleveland, without a clear superstar, would enter a rebuild, trading away or benching high-level players in order to tank for a higher draft pick. JR was forced to spend the entire 2018-2019 season riding the bench, as no one was interested in trading for the former Sixth Man of the Year after his Game 1 mistake. But as the league entered the NBA bubble in 2020, LeBron James, for the second time, would urge his Lakers to sign his former starting shooting guard. While J.R. Smith barely saw the court as Los Angeles won the 2020 NBA title, he was ecstatic to have been able to round out his career, having achieved the goal he set for himself after winning the 2016 finals. Despite being 34 years old and still shooting at a near-league best, whilst also retaining some of his athletic skills, not a single NBA team was interested in bringing on the two-time champion. JR, without the sport he loved, was lost. Smith began to reflect on the decisions he had made throughout his life, and his newfound spare time gave him an opportunity to learn more about his heritage, as well as exploring another sport he could succeed in. The ex-NBA player would walk on to North Carolina AT&T's college golf team, where he would achieve a 4.0 GPA in his first semester as a collegiate athlete, and he's currently considering becoming an athletic director or coaching in his future. After spending the past month and over 200 hours making this video, I truly believe if Smith had began his NBA career either in a better situation or having spent a year or two at North Carolina, we wouldn't be talking about just a Sixth Man of the Year, but perhaps a multiple-time All-Star who was worthy of max contracts. Let me know what you think. Could J.R. Smith, if he had actually been taught how to play the game much earlier than 2015, have had a much better career? Also, did you know that one of J.R. Smith's teammates was the shortest player ever to win the NBA scoring title, as well as the NBA's Most Valuable Player award? Allen Iverson, despite barely standing at 6 foot tall, only weighing a tiny 175 pounds and never lifting weights, became arguably the greatest pound-for-pound player in the history of the league. To find out how he did all of this, as well as how his career was almost taken away from him, click the video on your screen now.
Smith's out of bounds.